Hey everyone, Will Brink here, brinkzone.com. Topic I wanted to cover today was tattoos. Surprisingly, considering how popular tattoos are, there's very little information about tattoos as far as research is considered as far as tattoo safety. But I think a lot of people who get tattoos really are not aware of what does exist for safety research, or at least safety concerns, and they should be aware of it. I wrote an article in 2019 about it, and there wasn't a lot to go on, honestly, but just recently there's been some new information, so I updated the article, which I will post below. So whatever I reference, don't worry about it. I'm going to bring up the article and use it as kind of my guide here. But considering I say that obviously tattoos or tattooing has been with humanity for thousands of years, and the popularity of tattoos, at least in the U.S. population, which seems to be increasing around the world too, but at least in the U.S. population, you're talking about, I think, almost 40% of people have at least one tattoo. And I just don't see a lot of discussion on the possible downsides, or at least what the concerns people should be aware of with tattoos. So I'm gonna discuss that using this recently updated article. And per usual, unless I feel really strongly about a topic, but per usual, I will try to leave it to the viewer to make up their own mind, decide what the risk to benefit is. And the topic of risk and the topic of risk to benefit is something I discuss a lot because it's just really poorly appreciated, even among people who should know better. I mean, that is scientists and medical professionals and such, when they're talking about anything, are generally not very attuned to the concept of risk, specifically risk to benefit. Now, of course, that's statistical. It's a statistical topic. It's not necessarily one that is covered in their background, or in their training and that type of thing. So you have to again try to sort of cut them some slack. But again, understanding risk to benefit, again, is like anything, is a learned sort of a learned behavior, if not the specific objective topic of risk and risk to benefit and all that is secondary from just the learned behavior of understanding what it means and how to apply it and that type of thing. So point being, I'm gonna just discuss what I think is the possible downsides of tattoos that people should be aware of, that probably may not be aware of, because it does not seem to me to get much in the way of coverage, even on the internet, on media, what have you. And so let me bring in this article. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the page, and hopefully we will be all set there. So here it is. All right, so I'm on BrinkZone. Hopefully you guys can see it. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. So there's this main picture from my webpage on BrinkZone, like I say. So I had my article out 2019. The Life Extension Foundation, which is a company I have done some consulting work for over the years, some product R&D. I've written for their magazine over the years a number of times, which you can find. If you're a Life Extension member, you get their magazine. But if not, you can find some of the articles I wrote for them on their website, lef.org. Big company. They are my go-to company, one of my go-to companies as far as supplements. I use a lot of Life Extension products and a few other companies such as NutraBio. Jarrow is another good one, but that's another talk for another day. But anyway, so they put out an article recently, 2021, discussing some of the potential dangers of tattoos, which I will link to. And the section that I cut and paste into my article said, the numbers of people getting tattoos have markedly increased starting more than 20 years ago. Roughly 38% of people ages 18 to 29 now have at least one tattoo. Most are unaware of the risk from infection to exposure to heavy metals to being unable to detect an early skin cancer. The inks used in tattoos contain pigments that are often derived from heavy metals. This is concerned that these toxins could raise the risk of cancer, DNA damage, inflammation, oxidative stress, and weakened immune function. Tattoos remain popular, but they are not without inconsequential risks. Let me get some water here, if you will. Okay, so that's just a snippet that I took out of the article, but it actually does summarize some of the potential issues, and I'll get into a little more detail. So, but one thing that I find sort of irony to all this is that I often see some influencer, some online influencer, guru, exercise health expert, vegan, who will tell you about the ills and the dangers and the evils of synthetic sweeteners and so on and so forth, while they're like covered in tattoos. And I just find that ironic because apparently they haven't spent a lot of time actually looking into the potential downsides of tattoos. And if you're worried about optimizing or reducing your risk from certain things, certainly, things like heavy metals and such, covering your body in tattoos is probably not a great idea. So, what tattoos have in them, a lot of people are not aware that they, especially the brighter colors, contain heavy metals and other toxins. These are things like mercury. Let's see, I have a list here. Let me go down a little bit of a list. So we have mercury, lead, antimony, beryllium, chromium, cobalt, and arsenic, just to name a few of some of the heavy metals that can be found in some tattoo inks. It depends on the color. Different colors, those bright colors that come from the yellows and the reds and the blues and such, that coloration sometimes is coming from those metals. So different ink colors appear to pose different potential risks. Okay, you have to also understand. Let me go down here a little bit on this article. That the understanding of things like tattoos, as far as science and biology and physiology, was pretty outdated because back in the day, even when I was, in school and stuff, the skin was sort of viewed as this like impermeable thing. You put stuff on your skin, whether it was makeup, whether it was sunblock, whatever it was pretty much like considered sort of impermeable. And that, of course, is completely wrong. We have learned that, of course, that that skin, which is the largest organ of your body, by the way, which I guess some people also don't know, is highly permeable, and a lot of things can and do pass through the skin. Now, of course, take that one step further. A tattoo is not on the skin; it's under the skin. It's under the dermis, and it was always just sort of assumed, that it would be stuck under there, and it would just hang there, and that was it. And so, there wasn't a lot of worries. Everybody everybody knew that tattoos like faded over time, and assumed that that fading was part of it being absorbed slowly into your body. And but again, our understanding of things like the skin, the dermis, the vascularity and capillary function and so forth of the dermis, and so has advanced considerably in the last few decades, and the skin, like a lot of things that we took for granted, is a much more dynamic system organ than we once understood. And I think because of that, and because of course, now the popularity of tattoos becoming so high, there is now a new interest. But it is really amazing how little research exists on tattoos, considering, again, how long humanity has been getting tattooed and how popular they have become. And so it's actually kind of difficult to find good reliable research on tattoos. But what exists is definitely, in my view, a cause for concern that I think people really should be aware of, and maybe at least take that in consideration before they start adding a lot of large colorful tattoos. Now, of course, the basic. I mean, most people are aware, of course, that the acute risk of tattoos was infections. Hepatitis B, TB, syphilis actually is one of them. Malaria, HIV, even leprosy, technically. Now, that was one of the reasons that so many states took so long to legalize tattoos, because again, back in the day, dirty tattoo needles and poor practices and all that could lead to some serious infections. Now, tattoo parlors and good tattoo artists and shops and all that are regulated. They generally follow best practices, and the reality is that the risk of acute infection is if a shop is following best practices and all that, the risk is really not. I'm not going to say zero, because there's no such thing as zero risk, but I consider it personally a non-issue, and I think that states were definitely too slow to, as they are with everything, too slow to get around to legalizing tattoos. But now that's not to say, I'm going to go down here a little bit, that there is zero risk. But again, let's go into one. This is another reason I just updated this article, because there was a study published in. It's just a case study, which means that's the lowest quality study. But one of the best practices. Okay, the shops have to follow best practices, right? But there also are recommendations and best practices for people who just got tattoos. And when the person at the shop tells you to do something, like don't go swimming, or don't do this and don't do that for a certain amount of time, there's a reason. So one recent case study that was published was of a 32-year-old man who went swimming in the Gulf of Mexico. His tattoo became infected with the flesh-eating bacteria that lives in the ocean, and he died. And he went swimming within. He had it 5 days prior, so it wasn't like he got a tattoo and jumped in the water like that day or the next day. Apparently, it was 5 days earlier, but still apparently enough opening in the skin to allow that bacteria in, and voila, the dude is no more. So obviously that's a rare happening, but remember, best case practices apply to the shop and apply to you. So let's get back to, this talk isn't really about the acute risk, because I think the acute risk in today's world are really pretty, like you say, pretty darn low, and it's not a big concern. I'm more interested in the potentially long-term stuff, as far as those heavy metals and other toxins that are stuck under your skin. One of the problems with tattoos is that, say, it sort of falls in this sort of regulatory gray area. Of course, you're not swallowing these inks and stuff, so it's not going to be regulated that route. It comes more under a cosmetic thing, and cosmetics and stuff. Again, there's still not a great awareness. There's still lesser sort of a worry about things you put on your skin and under your skin than things you swallow. And I think that's justified to an extent, but we are learning again. For example, they find that some of the chemicals in sunblock get found in your system, in tissue. Some of them are toxic. And so there has been a whole resurgence of interest in chemicals and that go into sunblock, as to how much of it is absorbed. What are the risks? These are things that are all being looked at. So, but back to tattoos. So, but for example, from my article, the European Commission's Joint Research Center also identified heavy metals such as arsenic, lead, nickel, preservatives, organic compounds, bacteria, and other potentially harmful substances in the inks. It calls for a thorough review of tattoo inks in use throughout European Union, and highlights the need for strict regulation of the inks, which are also used for permanent makeup. As you obviously, again, permanent makeup's another thing, such as permanent eyeliner and such, so forth. The FDA, basically, the US FDA came to similar conclusion. There's minimal regulations on the inks, and there should probably be better, stricter regulation. So what happens to some of these compounds in the inks? Well, there has been some studies that found that some of the metals do accumulate in lymph nodes. That's early research. Again, the real question is, well, what is the risk of that? What does that mean? It's unclear what is the risk, what is the negative of that happening. But I don't think it takes a big leap to be concerned about the idea of some of these chemicals ending up in your lymph nodes, accumulating in your lymph nodes. We can't make the leap yet to say that they're dangerous. That is, they're carcinogenic or whatever. However, I do not think that one takes a big leap to be concerned about. Tattoos and cancer. This is one we need to talk about. There is not a known direct link between tattoos and cancer, but there is a weak link between tattoos and cancer. There was an article in Time Magazine, which I will link to, and there's some interesting findings, which also there was some findings, case studies that were also in the life extension. For example, there was one person who died from skin cancer, and it was shown, it was very clear that it happened. It spread shortly after he had gotten tattooed, and it was clear that the tattooing had been done right over the spot. Now, what's unclear is, did the tattoo itself or the tattoo artist basically, pierce the skin cancer and cause it to spread? That's a possibility. Did that skin cancer start at that, spot from something that was in the ink? It's unknown. Another definitely a legit concern is just the simple matter of a tattoo covering up skin cancer. That is, you don't see it. You're looking in the mirror. You might see a odd spot, weird shape, color, and say, I need to get this checked out. And if it's covered in ink and hard to see, you might not see it. You go to the doctor, get you're there for something else. I've had a few spots removed that I wasn't there. I was there for something else. And doc said, those look a little suspicious, Will. Let's get rid of those now. They were actinic keratosis, and that's a pre-cancer. So actinic keratosis is sort of red. It looks like that's sort of a red aggravated inflamed spot. And I had a couple of those taken off of my shoulder, and those will go on to be skin cancer. Now, normally they'll go into basal cell, which is, pretty harmless. Basal cell is, completely curable. It is the most common cancer. And if you, take it off, it's basically a curable cancer. There's even some debate whether it should even be considered a cancer. A dermatologist was telling me about that. However, so that is a real concern. So whether those inks under your skin have the potential to be carcinogenic in themselves is still up for debate. Again, I am personally not real comfortable with the idea of even small amounts of mercury and lead and arsenic and so forth being put under my skin. But again, debatable whether they in themselves are a risk for something like that. But I think a completely legit argument would be, the more tattoos you have, the more surface area you have covered, the more potential that there is that just visually you could miss, seeing what would be you might not see a red angry spot until it's larger than you'd like it to be. And then you notice it, and then it's too late, and that type of thing. So I think that is legit concern. Otherwise unknown. But the particle that it can end up, so far at least, has been identified. The one that's been found in lymph nodes was titanium dioxide. I think so the titanium dioxide, I believe, is for white coloring. I believe. I haven't looked into all, but like I say, the different bright colors. The safest color by far in tattoos appears to be just basic black. The other bright colors, such as yellow and reds and blues, I'm not sure about greens, are the ones that tend to potentially have heavy metals and other preservatives and such that you don't want. What I would do if I was someone who had a lot of tattoos covering my body, and the problem, there's no objective way to measure that. I'm going to say, let's say more 10% or above of your body. I mean, if you're above 10% of your body and covered in colorful tattoos, my advice would be to at least get your heavy metal status checked. For those metals that I listed, it's not a bad idea. And if you're going to be adding new tattoos, It's not a bad idea to, I recommend blood work for various things, obviously. And while you're there, you can get a heavy metal test. For example, someone who goes to the gun range a lot, it's always highly recommended to get your lead levels checked because, of course, lead levels accumulate in poorly ventilated areas with firearms and so forth. So my advice, like I say, if you do have a fair number of colorful tattoos above, let's say, 10% of your body, I would recommend getting your heavy metal status checked. You can see there below there is a picture of the late Rich Piana. Again, obviously, a lot of bodybuilders really do love their tattoos, and personally, I think as an NPC, as somebody who was an NPC judge for 20 plus years, if you're going to be a competitive bodybuilder, I tend to think personally it distracts. I'm not a fan. Um, again, your body. Up to you, but I personally tend to think covering yourself, going through all that work to create an impressive physique, and then covering it all up with tattoos, I just don't get it. But again, when I just came back from Olympia a couple of weeks ago, man, people are just covered, full sleeves and full legs, and all that are just like the thing. Um, so the bottom line, I guess, is this information that I'm giving you. Would it it wouldn't prevent me from getting a small tattoo especially in black. I might even I was considering getting a small tattoo, a little greyhound tattoo, because I have a couple of retired greyhounds and one of them's getting quite a bit older, and I'm thinking of getting one while she's still with us. And but I would personally be very hesitant to get large tattoos with a lot of bright colors in them. I don't, not knowing what the risk is, because surprising little research exists. I certainly do know that I don't really want those metals and other compounds under my skin. And this is a risk to benefit. I mean, your risk of something serious. I mean, there's other issues we just don't know. Do people that have chronic fatigue, is that an extra load on their immune system to have a small amount of some of those ink sitting under their skin? People with autoimmune diseases, stuff like that, we just don't know the answer. And again, personally, if I was someone with any one of those those conditions, I would not personally be getting large tattoos. Finally, you have to understand that also there's, tattoo regret is a thing. It's a big thing. There is as many people getting tattoos removed as there are getting tattoos. Millions of people. It's a huge business. And, you can, cut anything you do, grow a beard, change the color of your hair, get a piercing, whatever. Those are all reversible. Those are all things you might change your mind. You may grow out of, you may get more of them, or whatever you want. But tattoos are the one thing that are pretty much you should consider permanent, right? Yeah, I mean, there's tattoo removal. My understanding, it's gotten a lot better than it used to be, but it's still expensive, and some people have told me it's actually again, depending on how much you have to get done and how much the colors and where it's located, it can hurt. Apparently, it can be fairly painful. So I would personally keep that in mind. Again, I'm not necessarily trying to talk you out of it. I just think that's something that people should be aware of. Had a friend of mine. She was a massage therapist, and she was 35. Beautiful girl, in great shape. And she really had, I mean, her tattoos started right from the bottom of her neck and went all the way down her chest and down her arms. And they were beautiful tattoos. I mean, I would like to be honest and say that some of these tattoos, again, some of them are pretty awful, and I don't know why people get them. However, some of them are beautiful and amazing art, and I won't deny that. And hers really were impressive. And I said to her, she was my massage therapist slash my friend, and she had a tank top on so you could really see it. And I said, you must be really into your tattoos and really, love these tattoos to get to go that far. And she said, no. I wish I'd never got them. And they've, for me, she said, at least for her, they've been problematic in a number of areas. And she was really into them when she was in her early 20s, and her long-term boyfriend owned a tattoo place, and so for her they were free, and so on and so forth. And at this point in her life, she really wished she had never gotten them. And considering how covered she was, that she went to the tattoo the place to talk to somebody about removal, and they said, we could fade them, we could do some stuff with them, but you are so covered and so extensive that it would take a long time. It'll cost X amount of money. It'll be really painful. So, that's just one example, and that doesn't mean that's you, but just, I think, keep that in mind. I will tell you one thing. One thing I can absolutely guarantee you is that whatever you think is important and whatever you really like and think you're going to be into when you're 35 is not the same as when you're 25. It is not the same when you're 45, nor is it the same when you're 55. And this is things that you should keep in mind, no matter what you think at whatever age you're at. And I can't get past 55, tell you what it's like 65, because I'm not 65. But I will tell you, what I thought was, a big thing to me and all that when I was 25 and then 35 and stuff. It's about every 10 years, it seems to me, people change their mind on a whole lot of things. So just keep that in mind. Again, you might be somebody out there who has a lot of tattoos. You love your tattoos. You're going to get more tattoos and all that, and more power to you. I'm not trying to talk you out of anything. I do, however, think, like anything, be aware of the risks. Be aware there are risks. Be aware that there is not much research out there as to who is at risk and who isn't at risk, and how much of these metals and other things do leach into organs and so forth, and at least know what that there is a benefit to risk, a risk to benefit there, and you're willing to know that. I think people, as long as people know there is a benefit to risk and know what it is, they should be able to make their own decisions. I think everybody should be able to make that decision, whatever that is. What I don't like to see is people are unaware of that there is a risk, or without knowing what that risk to benefit is, and making decisions, not well-defined decisions and not informed decisions. As long as you're making an informed decision and that's your decision, then you're all good by me. So let me get this article off my screen. Drop this bad boy out before I come on there. All right. So that's my talk on tattoos. If you got any questions, comments, feel free to leave that, underneath this video, and I'll try to answer them. The article will be linked. Obviously, this talk on tattoos was brought to you by Will Brink, yours truly, Brinkzone.com, and Alpha Joe, which tastes good, feels good, it's good for you. So, and I'll see you guys on the Brink Zone.